I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't breathe. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Almost overnight, she went from a possible witness to a person of interest in the case of a missing Mama 5 from New Canaan. The girlfriend in the middle of a bitter and brutal divorce battle.
The stuff you were throwing out, we have. It's all Jennifer. It belongs to Jennifer. Do you understand?
Turned high-profile murder investigation.
Guys, what happened to Jennifer, Michelle?
We're taking you inside the trial of Michelle Troconis.
Hello, welcome to day 20. Can you believe it? Day 20 of this murder trial. Bear in mind, conspiracy to commit murder carries the same sentence as murder. So it is quite a big deal. Certainly it's a more difficult case to prosecute by a long shot. But it's nevertheless very intriguing, very interesting. And at long last, we're going to be dealing with some critical evidence. We're looking at the telematics. We're also going to be looking at texts. Spoiler alert, there are not a lot of texts, but there is a lot of phone events. We're going to start off looking at that. Phone events, that's also something that was a big deal in the Morphew case, and it kind of also deals with this whole idea of the absence of evidence is evidence. I mean, think about it. If you didn't murder someone, wouldn't you want to give that person your phone, give the officer your phone and say, look at my phone, you can see where I was, you can see what I was doing, my phone should be my alibi. If your phone isn't an alibi because there's no data there, then that is potentially a problem. And that is, I think, a key to understanding the Summer Wells case. It's when the phone data starts to sort of dry up. That's when you want to start paying attention. Anyway, good to see you guys. Mel Stiller, Lynn Lippy. I think Targle has already given Tanny, thanks a lot for that super chat. Appreciate it. Keep them coming. Dee Patterson in Australia, good to see you as well. Chelsea, Bria, good to see all of you. I'm just going to play a little bit more from this particular video from NBC Connecticut, and then we're certainly not going to play a lot more. And then we will we're just going to go through a couple of highlights from yesterday's testimony.
At 80 Mountain Spring Road timeline, and also walking the jury through this surveillance video showing part of the shuffling around of vehicles on May 24th, 2019, the last day Jennifer was seen alive. Now the spotlight also on John Schoenhorn as he got the chance to cross-examine one of the state's most critical witnesses in this case. And the defendant.
And you remember yesterday we were a little bit surprised. Schoenhorn seemed kind of emotional, seemed to almost shout at the judge at one point, or I don't know who he was shouting at, but he certainly raised his voice in a way that was somewhat surprising. The judge also kind of had to express himself in a fairly stern way. Some fireworks and drama definitely yesterday afternoon, do you remember?
Watching intently as the man who she once rode dirt bikes with testified against her. Michelle Troconis continues to maintain her innocence and has pleaded not guilty to all charges.
Now, maybe I haven't expressed it very well. I know I've compared her dress code to that of a librarian, and some people have said, I know wonderful librarians, but I guess another way of putting it is, do you think someone who rides dirt bikes would dress in sort of beige jerseys and beige sweaters and wear glasses? Do you think they would sort of purposefully try and look mousy and meek? Or would someone who rides dirt bikes try and appear to be an assertive, sexy, strong, interesting person? Does someone who rides dirt bikes want to be a wallflower, or do they want to be like, how does that song go from Katy Perry? Something about a tiger, hear my roar, kind of thing. Which Michelle Troconis are we dealing with? Which is the real Michelle Troconis?
Our Kevin Geis joins us live outside Sanford Superior Court.
Correct.
And you said that it was an effort, you saw it as an effort for Ms. Troconis to cheer up photos, right?
That's how I understood.
So like as a joke, right? A sick joke, but still a joke, right?
I wouldn't call it a joke, but yeah.
Well, you're cheering somebody up with some humor, right?
Not that kind of humor, but yeah.
I must say, I didn't really like that moment in court. It's not really resolved. Like, say what you think. I think the prosecution and or the judge should have, or even the defense lawyer should have said, what do you think that statement really was? And he sort of makes a half-hearted comment there, and then they sort of just continue. It is very important to know, what did Michelle mean when she said that? On the other hand, the prosecution, I think, ended with that right at the end of cross-examination. Didn't he come back to that particular point?
He told you she had done it before, right?
Yes.
So, Kevin, Attorney John Schoenhorn here, attempting to tamp down his truck back. Police.
Okay, so I think that we'll leave it at that. We're now going to look at the texts and telematics. Not so much the text, but the cell phone activity during the morning on Fotis's phone on the morning of the murder, 24th of May, right? I'm gonna have to, what's the word? I'm gonna have to sort of move forwards and backwards a little. I do want to deal with a couple of texts that were sent, but let's first just get into the telematics. The cell phone activity. This is coming from Celebrite, the Celebrite report.
Time that the event happened, the event type. So we can see there are different event types in here: display, device lock status, Wi-Fi state. The value is what was happening to that event type at that time, and then we have our source information.
So if you can read, if you can see what's on screen, you see 644 display on, right? Display on. 644 20 seconds, display on. 644 unlocked. 645 connect. So I think it's fair to say, I think it's fair to assume that Fotis possibly woke up at around about this time. Remember, the crime happened at about 8 o'clock. That Fotis either woke up and reached for his phone, or he was already awake and had been driving somewhere or cycling somewhere, and then reached for his phone. But whatever the event, I would suspect that he woke up quite early in the morning and then turned his phone on. Bear in mind, he's still got an hour to get to where he needs to go. Anyway, that's certainly something to think about as well. How long would it take to get there, and so on. But in any event, the phone starts its activity at 6:44 on that morning.
What time was the first event or user interaction on DULOS' device on May 24th? between that time frame?
The first device event I was able to see was at 6:44 and 12 seconds a.m.
What happened?
This was a display event, and it appears as though the display turned on.
What does that mean, the display turned on?
It could mean a variety of things. It could mean someone clicked on the device and actually turned it on. It could have received a notification and the device turned on, but it means that the display on the device actually activated.
And line 2, sir, indicates the start time of that event. What time was the start time?
For line 2?
Yes, please.
The start time for line 2 was 6:44 and 20 seconds a.m.
And the end time?
Was 6:47 a.m.
What does that mean?
So what it registers is how long the event type occurred for. So it appears on this that the display for the screen was on for approximately 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
And line 3, please, if you could explain what that reads.
Line 3 is our device lock status. So this is showing you that the event type was a device lock event and that the event was that the device was unlocked.
And by unlocked, do you mean somebody entered a password?
For the iPhone Model XS, it would have been a password or a face recognition if the screen had a lock screen, a password on it.
Do you know if this phone had a facial recognition or a lock screen?
I do know that the phone had a lock screen, as I observed that it had a lock screen.
And you actually entered the password on that phone as well when you did the extraction, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so when you entered the passcode that day to do the extraction, did that create a device event?
It would have, yes.
Okay, and it would have read similar to this, that line 3.
That's correct.
Now, line 4, what does that mean, sir?
So again, our event is the Wi-Fi state, and it's showing that this device connected to Wi-Fi.
Now, line 5 and 6.
So a couple of things to note. If there is a conspiracy, if there is an sort of active accessory scenario going on at the time of the murder, then what would you expect? What would you expect to see on someone's phone? And it's one word. I know it's probably quite tricky to try and read my mind, but what would you expect to see between one phone and another phone in terms of the cell phone activity? If there is a conspiracy, what would you expect to see? See if you guys can read my mind. Oh, very good, Pauline Buckles. That's exactly what you would expect to see.
Coordination.
Right? You would expect to see two different people communicating about how far you with that. I'll meet you there. I'm bringing this. I'm on my way, etc., right? And that is exactly what you see.
Coordination.
In the Patrick Frazee and Crystal Kenny case. I must say that is such an important high-profile case, such a rare case where the mistress comes forward, gets a plea deal, and she tells us exactly what all that dirty work was and why some of the things that you couldn't figure out occurred. And that's so rare in true crime. And so that case is such an important case to intertextually figure other things out. But there you see the coordination, you see the cell phones moving together at certain points, the cell phones moving towards one another at certain key points, communications to one another, the victim's cell phone moving with one at one point and the other at another point, and so on and so on. So the question is, are we going to see something like that
Coordination.
here, what do you guys think? So the other thing to look at, well done, Pauline, good thinking there. The other thing is when you see the orientation change, why would you change orientation on your phone? And there could be a couple of reasons. One might be that you're looking at a video. Another reason might be that you're looking at a map, right? That could be another reason for an orientation change. And there's quite a lot of that going on. He wants to be in landscape mode. He wants to be in landscape mode. And this goes on till past 7:01. Is he trying to look at a map? Bearing in mind that possibly he was cycling to his destination. Remember, he needs to get there before 8 a.m.
Read orientation change. Could you just explain, first of all, the time and what that means?
Yes, so our start time is 6:45 and 8 seconds a.m. With an end time of 6:45 and 12 seconds a.m. And the orientation change would be taking the device either vertically or horizontally and then moving it in the other direction. So if your phone is vertically and you turn it horizontally, the database will register that there was an orientation change and that it went to a landscape.
And that was between 6:46 and 36 and 6:46:48 for line 6?
For line 6, yes, same thing.
And line 5 was 6:45:08 and 6:45:12. Those are separate events, is that right?
These two are separate events, that's correct.
So somebody would have to be manipulating the phone for that to happen, is that correct?
The device would have to be moved in order for that to happen.
So there are a couple of ways that you can analyze this kind of data. And this is something you particularly want to do where evidence is missing, right? So you don't have text messages, you don't have a confession, you don't have a video of what happened. So one way to determine whether the events, specifically the phone activity on the day of the murder, whether they are unusual, what's the obvious way to determine that? What's the obvious way to determine if cell phone activity on the day of the murder is unusual? What would be the simplest and most obvious way to do that? Let's see what you guys say. Remember, I spoke about premeditation and post-meditation. So that's well put. Okay, you would want to look at the phone history. You would want to look at previous logs, but specifically, you'd really want to go to the previous day. In other words, you want to look at a weekday. What's this person's habits? What do they normally do? And most people who work, who've got a job and kids, tend to have very regimented lifestyles. They wake up at a certain time, they habitually do certain things, right? And so what you'd want to do, first of all, is compare just the phone activity. You don't need to see texts, just the phone activity, what is going on in the phone activity on Thursday compared to Friday, right? And you can then reinforce any insights you gain from that by looking at Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, and even going further than that. You might also want to get a little bit of, testimony from someone who's familiar with this person, something like a housekeeper, someone that is in the inner circle that would be aware of this, perhaps a receptionist, what time does he normally arrive at work, etc., and confirm some of those details. And in the same way that you want a record of the typical phone activity, you'd also want a similar record of the typical vehicle telematics, and then cross-reference those with also Michelle Troconis's, right? And I think what you would see is it's very unusual for them to be, have they ever been in Hartford on a Friday evening disposing of garbage before? Both of them. And just in terms of that data, that's going to stand out, I would imagine, like a sore thumb, like a fluttering red flag. Does that make sense? So that's a very kind of neutral way, a scientific way of just letting the statistical data on the phone speak for itself. This is what this person usually does. On the day of the murder, are they doing what they usually do? Well, if they've committed the murder, very probably not, right?
Now, the next time, line 7, it has start time 7:01 and end time 7:03:16. What does display on off and display on mean?
So this is that display on the device turning on.
And that is 12 minutes after the phone was physically moved up and down, or orientation changed, I should say.
That appears to have happened about 15 minutes after.
15 minutes. Now, I'm going to draw your attention down to 9, line 9. Was the device unlocked again?
So again, I'm a little disappointed with the prosecution. You know, I think you need to be very clear and say we're now at 7:01 in the morning, right? What had preceded this was phone activity from 6:44 till about 7. I think you've got to be explicit in the milestones in your timeline. This happened on that day. This happened at that time. Don't assume, you know, it's almost like when you're reading a book. If you look away and you haven't kept track of the page you're on, you may completely lose your place. You know, provide that bookmark in the jury's mind so that they can keep track of the narrative. In any event, there we are. We're now at 7 o'clock, and now we want to know what happened in the hour between 7 o'clock in the morning on the morning of the murder on Fotis's phone and 8 o'clock. This is going to be pretty interesting, don't you think?
Yes, it was.
At what time?
The device was unlocked again at 7:01 and 24 seconds a.m.
And the end time for that event?
The end time for
Oh, excuse me. He has now just mentioned the time.
the unlocked state was 7:03 and 16 seconds a.m.
Was the phone manipulated another time?
I see on line 6 would be another, line 12 would be another user manipulation of the device.
And what time?
So I must say, this is quite surprising. If Fotis committed the crime, you would actually expect from around about here, the phone to be inactive from about 8:05 until 10, right? You'd kind of expect the phone to be inactive, and it isn't. This kind of makes sense between 7:16 and 8:07. There it is inactive. And so one does wonder what's going on here. I suppose another possibility could be that someone else has his phone. That's also possible. You know, if you're going to pretend that you are somewhere else in terms of a bicycle and a car, then aren't you going to take that pretense further with your phone?
Time was line 12.
Line 12 was at 8:07 and 16 seconds a.m.
And by manipulation event, what do you mean? What happened?
So that's a device unlock. As I mentioned, the display.
So at this point, 8:07, the crime is likely underway. And so it's very unlikely that he unlocked the phone while this was taking place, unless it kind of unlocked in his pocket. But I don't know. Another way to interpret this is at 8:07:56. That is almost 8 minutes past 8. It's possible that at this point Jennifer had already been murdered, right? It's possible that at 8:08 she'd just been murdered, and this was to communicate something like it's done, right?
Display is something that could happen without interaction, but a device unlock requires user interaction to occur.
And I'm going to draw your attention down to this 8:26, line 13. Now, we saw that 8:26 time frame before. Do you recall where?
No, I don't.
Okay. I'm actually going to minimize this and draw your attention back.
So the lawyer is,
File 6.
well, let's just watch. She's
What
cross-referencing.
time was that answered call, sir?
So this is the phone call from Andreas, and it was at 8:26.
Thank you.
The cameraman seems a little asleep at this point.
Back to file 9. And we're at line 14, please. Sir, what happened at line 14? If you could read that.
So line 14 is at 8:26:56 a.m. and it is an audio output indicating that some sort of audio was output from the device's speaker.
So does that mean the call was answered on a speaker?
Based on the time, it appears that way, but some audio came out of the speaker.
So that looks like Fotis's phone received a call and he had it on speaker. And I must say, I have my phone on speaker most of the time. I don't hold my phone to my ear. I tend to have it on speaker pretty much all the time.
At 8:26.
Now, this also indicates an end time. What does that mean?
That appears to be the time that the audio output for the speaker ended.
That doesn't mean that the call ended, or does it?
No.
Okay. And this is under the events category?
Yes.
So it would just be virtue of the phone, correct? Did the phone get?
So now we at about 8:31, display on, display off. Okay.
Manipulated again another time?
Yes, there's another orientation change at 8:31:20 a.m.
Actually, I'm going to draw your attention to the one line 16 right before that. What does that mean?
There was a one before that. It's a device unlock status at 8:31:08 a.m. And again, the device was unlocked.
And you indicated the orientation change.
Yes.
Again, that would have to be a manipulation event.
Yes.
But the display on and off we see here at line 18 and 19, you can't say that that was a manipulation event.
That's correct.
903, sir, what happened at line 20 at 903?
So at 9:03.
So I think it's probably important to note that for half an hour, there's no activity. So from 8:30 till 9, for half an hour, there's no activity. And then there's, I don't know whether the person's taking a break from something, but the device is then deliberately unlocked.
3 a.m. there is another unlock of the device.
And that would be require manipulation?
Yes, that's correct.
What time did that end?
That device event ended at 9:04:40.
And line 21, sir, is that a manipulation event?
It is at 9:03:04 a.m. There's an orientation change to landscape.
And what time did that end?
That ended at 9:03:08.
Now, going through the rest of the time period, We have the display events, but what's line 27?
So at 9:20, line 27 at 10:34 and 4 seconds AM, it shows that there was a camera state activity.
So what's quite interesting, I'm not quite sure why she's jumped so quickly through it all, but apparently the crime was completed by around about 10, right? And then there's another half-hour jump. Now, you may remember there was a half-hour jump from 7:15 or so, maybe a little bit longer than half an hour, but half an hour plus jump from about 7:30 till, sorry, 7:15 till 8. Now there's another jump from 10 till 10:30. And wouldn't that be the period that the Chevy was driven to Waveney Park? Now, again, I'm a little bit blind here. I can't say for sure, was the phone in Fotis's hand in his possession, right? And is there any confirmation of it pinging in the area? Or is this simply the handset giving a little bit of activity data, right? The interesting thing I think that's going to come up is when you cross-reference the phone data, the phone activity with the telematics. For example, if the vehicle stops, does the phone then activate shortly after that another vehicle? For example, the Chevy Suburban, for example, the Ford Raptor. And so I would hate to be doing this investigation, but cross-referencing the phone activity data with the telematics data would certainly provide you with a more accurate idea of what the person driving was possibly up to. What's interesting here is at 10:34, it seems like the camera is activated. And if you think about the Chris Watts case, you had something similar. Chris Watts was at the well site, and he took a photo of something at the well site that was leaking, and I think it was leaking. And all of that was intended to be part of his alibi. And the question is, had he taken photos before of well site related apparatus or equipment? But anyway, the point is, Chris Watts, during the disposal phase in his case, he took photos of flowers. He was also on his phone. He was communicating with his mistress, song lyrics. Do you remember all of that? So the phone data review in the Chris Watts case is very intertextual to this. We can kind of learn a little bit about what activity could have been taking place. Things like calling the bank, calling a school, calling his mistress, calling colleagues, where are you? All of those sort of things. A concerned friend calling, an unexpected call from someone that sort of throws you a little bit off. You'd expected that and that. Now someone calls when you didn't expect it, right?
And that the camera stayed powered on. So something in the device called for the camera to activate. It will tell you that what caused that actually was a FaceTime, and that the camera that turned on was the front camera. Devices often have a front and.
So there you have it. The camera was on and he was actually using FaceTime. And that's quite an intimate little thing. It's quite an intimate thing. What did I write down in my notes here? So as far as I understand, at 8:26, a call came in from Greece. And I don't think that was intended. I don't think that was part of the plan. Then there's another call that came, a video that was sent at 10 a.m., I think. And ironically enough, I'll play it to you guys a little bit later, but ironically enough, that was a kind of a meme where the question went, what would you like to spend the rest of your life married to your wife, A, or B? And then the guy says B. And that is the type of thing he was listening to at the time of the murder. Quite ironic. I think that came in at 10 a.m. That's what that was about.
Rear camera. In this instance, the front camera is what turned on.
That's 10:34.
Was that in connection with a phone call, or can you tell?
I would say it's in connection with a FaceTime event.
And again, 28, is that the Wi-Fi connection?
Yes.
So
That would not.
that's yet another thing you can cross-reference is the router. Remember in the Chris Watts case, you could tell when the router was connecting, whether it was the airport router to Shanann's phone, the home router, or some other router. Would the office router be connecting to his phone? And so that's something else you'd want to cross-reference here.
Not be a manipulation event, or would it?
I would say no. If that device had been paired to that Wi-Fi, it could drop and reconnect on its own.
Now going through the rest of the events until that, this actually goes till 1 o'clock. Are there any other manipulation or user interaction with the device until 12:58:44, the last one on this?
No.
Sir, is there a way to determine on the phone if the phone was moved during that 5:35 to 12:22 timeframe?
There are metrics that determine that, yes.
I'm going to draw attention to file 10, file labeled activity sensor data. Okay, what are we looking at here?
So this is activity sensor data. It's often related to.
So I'm not sure what's going on with the cameraman. I don't know whether he left his glasses at home, but there's not much going on here.
Apple's health application, and it's giving you the time frame. It breaks it down into hour increments. So it's saying from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. that there were aggregated measurements. It counted 2 samples as the device traveling 44.4, and that is in meters.
That is in meters?
Yes.
Okay. And it says over here, distance traveled steps. What does that mean?
So it'll also count your steps, similar to a pedometer or.
So do you remember in the Chris Watts case, you also had fitness apps? By the way, in the Nicola Bully case, you actually had, I think it's called Fitbit, showing probably the very moment that she was in the water, there was a spike in her heart rate. So basically showing the time of that particular incident. But you had similar activity of going up and down stairs in terms of Shanann and Chris Watts. And I think at a trial level, that would have been fascinating for them to piece that data together in terms of the movements. Bear in mind, Chris Watts went up the steps to the oil tanks. So, that's also part of it. So anyway, all of that was being captured as well. So before we continue with this, I want to play you the that meme that was sent to Photos somewhere around here. It was sent by someone from Greece. These are the essentially three texts that they rescued from the day of the murder, just 3 texts. And basically, sorry, this is the day before. I'm not sure if they got any other information besides this. He said, and they're quite cryptic. He says, call me tomorrow morning at mine and we'll talk. That was 7 minutes to 6 in the evening. So the evening before the murder. Then 3:30 says yours. And that is quite late that night, 25 past 10. I don't know if that means I'll meet you at 3:30 at your place or whatever. You can see quite cryptic text. Another one, 10:25 and 26 seconds at the normal, and I presume that means something like at the normal place. That is how few messages survived the purge. Basically 3 messages.
10:25 and 26 seconds PM. For 2019 at 10:20.
And so this is the video and that was sent from this fellow, and he got it on the morning of the murder, 23 minutes past 10, and we're gonna watch what it says. Basically just a meme.
3 and 42 seconds AM.
Now, I just want to ask you, going back to the redacted chats, the phone number here starting with 30, do you know what country code that is?
Yes, I do. It's Greece.
And we talked about UTC time, and you indicated.
So it's possible that the cameraman is purposefully blocking out some of the information because some of that might be private, might be someone's phone number. The suspect's phone number wouldn't really matter, but a private individual's phone number or a family member or child might be private, right?
The times at the bottom.
All right, you have 2 choices.
This was the video that was in that attachment.
Okay, so this is the meme that was sent to him on the basically just after the murder. This was the meme that was sent to him.
May it play?
All right, you have 2 choices. A, you can spend the rest of your life with your wife, or B.
You catch that? Kind of not so funny in this context. But somebody knew what Fotis was going through and sent something that was pretty on target in terms of his feelings at the exact time when, certainly in the very early visceral aftermath, when Jennifer DULOS had just ceased to exist, right?
Was that the message that was sent to Photos DULOS's device at around 10:20 on May 24th, 2019?
Yes, that's correct.
After the text message or WhatsApp message the night before indicating to make that phone call at 8:30 in the morning?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, are there, you can have a seat, sir. Thank you. I want to ask you some questions about user interaction with the device, with the cell phone itself.
So now we're going to just look at cell phone pings. I'm just not quite sure where to start that. Let's go over here.
What's line 138?
Line 138 would be the earliest time in this report, and that is 12:23 and 50 seconds in the afternoon PM.
Did you create a video that mapped out each of those location points?
Yes, I did.
Can you just explain to the jury how you created that?
Yes. So what I'm able to do within Celebrite is export the longitude, latitude, and date and time into a file format called the KML or KMZ format. And that is able to be ingested into a mapping program. I was trained by the FBI to use Google Earth Pro, and that's what I used. So I'm able to take those location data points, ingest them into the mapping program, and then use a video editing software to screen record the locations in what's known as a time lapse. So I used a program called Camtasia, which again, I was trained by the FBI to use. and created the time lapse, which starts to move a time bar over time, and you'll be able to see the data points start to move in a direction or location as time moves on.
Did you utilize this document to create that report?
This document was created from the same data set that was used to create that report.
I'm going to play the video.
So I don't know if you can see on your screen. That's Jefferson Crossing over there. Can you see my cursor? That's Mountain Spring Road over there. You can see it's littered with, these are all the 24th of May. This is in the afternoon.
Detective Clark, was that the video that you created utilizing those points?
Yes.
Actually, just going to ask you a couple questions on it. If I can. So the first pin is up here. What time does that first pin say?
That first pin shows 12:23 p.m., so 12:23 in the afternoon.
And what area is this?
That's the area for Jefferson Crossing.
Now,
So what can we say about this? Without any more information, Timmy, I'm going to have to put you down on the ground, not putting you down in another way. Right? What, without knowing any more information, what inference can we draw? Let me take you back, excuse me, slightly. That's the first, that is the first ping of the day from Fotis's phone at 12:23. So 23 minutes past noon on the 24th. Well, Zircon, you need to also try and think a little bit critically. What does it mean that the first ping is at 12:23 on 24 May? What do you think? What do you think it means? That should be MAY. Someone says that's when his phone turned on. Well, if you look at that phone activity, is that what it means? So Zircon said, "You tell me." So I'm gonna tell you. I would suggest that at 12:23 most of the dirty work had been done. Do you guys agree with that? And if you think about it, at 8 o'clock, the crime likely took place, and 12:23 is almost 4.5 hours later. Is that enough time to commit a murder, collect the evidence, clean the crime scene, dispose of the body? Do you think that's enough time to do all of those? And a good example of that is the Chris Watts case. Take the Chris Watts case. He likely killed Shanann. I believe he killed Shanann pretty early in that morning, about 2 a.m. And then by, I don't know, bear in mind he had to travel to the well site, but by pretty early that morning he was already calling the bank and calling the school. By then the crime was complete. We know that, so that is around about how long it can take for a murderer to, execute a crime, travel from A to B, and then be having completed everything. Chris Watts would have needed to delete calls. He would need to get rid of clothing. He would need to clean his truck to some extent. He would need to dig a hole. He would need to do all of those things, right? And he would probably need, in terms of his own home, need to dispose of certain incriminating financial evidence and whatnot. And so when the phone comes back to life, that's also an indication, how long it's been dormant is an indication of, if it's dormant for 10 minutes, it's not a big deal. If it's dormant for half an hour, it's not necessarily a big deal. If it's dormant for the entire morning, that's another thing you can compare to other phone history. Does your phone normally not ping all morning? Is there normally like this desert of activity for an entire morning when you're the CEO of a company and it's a Friday? It's not like it's a Saturday or a Sunday. It's a weekday. Mondays and Fridays, I would imagine, tend to be more hectic than other days. And so is it normal that you would suddenly have this sort of situation? Another thing is, where does his phone activate? Well, not in New Canaan. It activates in a place that makes him look innocent. It activates at home, right? So the absence of evidence is evidence. Can you guys see that?
What time does that first pin say?
That first pin shows 12:23 p.m. So 12:20.
Just to be clear, he's saying first pin, not first ping. Although I would imagine that pin is a ping in a sense.
23 in the afternoon.
And what area is this?
That's the area for Jefferson Crossing.
Now, as you go through, I pause it at 12 seconds, these pins appear. Are they all appearing at the exact same time?
Some of them are. So as a device, if it is moving, you may see within a period of time, a period of a minute, which does not record seconds on here, that the device may record multiple points in multiple locations. But then you also see that there is a time change as they move down towards the lower end of the Mountain Spring Road area on the map. And we're seeing 12:34, 1:34, 1:35, and 1:37 p.m.
And by Mountain Spring Road, is that what area we're looking at right now at 20 seconds?
That's
into
correct.
the video? And what is the time that is displayed at this point?
Currently, it's 14:26, which is 2:26 p.m.
And just to be clear, this is the device. You can't say who is holding it or moving it or anything during this time period.
That's correct.
It's just, okay. And are you zooming in at this point?
Yes.
Now, some of these timeframes are the same. We have 1425 here, 1426, 1425 up here. Is that similar to what you were talking about? The phone was moving, the data points?
Yes, it's within that 1 minute time span between 1425 and 1426. There were multiple recordings of GPS location data.
So do you think Fotis wanted this part of his phone to be seen? In other words, what he's doing, I guess, in the afternoon, do you think, number one, that he wants this to be seen, and number two, that he's aware that it's being seen? Or do you think he's not aware?
Now, I have one question, sir. Do you see it's up here at Jefferson Crossing at this point?
Yes.
What time is this?
That is 16:16, which is 4:16 p.m.
Okay, now we saw back in the earlier part of the video, the pins go down towards Mountain Spring Road. We didn't see the pins come up, or did I miss it? Are there any location data traveling from Mountain Spring Road back up to Jefferson Crossing?
There does not appear to be.
Why is that?
That could be for a multitude of reasons. It could be cellular connectivity. It could have happened from if the device goes into a low power mode, it may not have been able to generate the location data. Whatever was calling for that location data didn't call for it anymore. So there are a multitude of reasons why that could happen.
Thank you. Now,
So just in terms of criminal psychology, and this is just, again, remember I said yesterday, in a sense, you must try and think of this case the same way that the judge is, kind of from a global perspective, not saying the whole time from a global perspective, but certainly not the whole time from the leaves and the trees perspective. You also want to be reminded of the woods. Now, if you think about it, given the, almost lost my train of thought there, given the evidence in this case, I'll be a bit more specific in a moment, but given the evidence in this case, would you have expected to find it all laid out there on his phone? Would you have expected to have found just page after page of cell phone data just telling you everything you wanted to know, right? And what I mean is, if you take the crime scene, when you walked into the garage, was it all laid out there? Just you just need to open your eyes and there it is in front of you, right? Are you guys following what I'm saying? The same actually applies in the Chris Watts case. If you were a police officer and you entered the Watts home, right? The same thing when you entered the Watts home, nothing really seemed out of place at face value. Well, when you get hold of his phone, do you think that's going to change, right? In other words, there's a match between the covering up of evidence, physical evidence, blood evidence, foul play related evidence, and digital breadcrumbs. The same level of fastidiousness in terms of cleaning up things and wrapping up garbage bags is going to be evident in the deleting of digital breadcrumbs, right? It's the same thing. It's the same psychology that's working. It's a criminal psychology that's based on taking away evidence of a crime in terms of physical evidence left behind, and there was a lot of blood left behind, and also the digital trail that is going to be telling you the exact same thing, that's also got to be removed, and guess what it is. So, if you, how can I put this? If you went to the house and couldn't really find much evidence, and you thought, you know what, we're probably going to find a lot on the phone. No, you're not. You're not going to find that much. But in the same way that you must look harder, it's not that the evidence is not there, it's just not so easy to find. Look harder, and then you will find evidence of a sort. So you find, although there's evidence, you can't necessarily tell if it's blood. You can't necessarily tell if it is blood, that it's Jennifer DULOS's blood. You can nevertheless start seeing something did happen here. There's little evidence of a paper towel here. There were 12 paper towels bought in bulk, and only 2 remained. You're starting to tell things by inference. In the same way, in terms of the digital trail, you don't just look at his cell phone and say, I don't see any text messages, that's the end of the story. You say, okay, what can we fathom from the cell phone activity? And then also, in terms of these pins or pings, whatever you want to call them, when does the phone say, okay, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing? When is whatever needed to be hidden, when is that phase over? And that's already telling you something. I so often say in true crime, the answer is time. And so if the phone is in a state of limbo for a certain period, that is telling you that quite a big operation was likely taking place during that period, right? And that is almost the reverse of, look at that piece of evidence, that tells us that. In other words, where there are blank spaces, that's also telling you something, right? And in contrast to this, as I said before, if someone suspected you of committing a murder and you knew you were innocent, you would do the opposite. You'd say, take my phone will show you where I was. I was at home most of the time. I walked my dog over here, and I went to X to do that, blah, 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 and that is it. There's no mystery. You can track my phone from minute to minute. And so it would be easy to use a phone for an alibi. So why is it so hard with this particular person? Where's the data, right? It's quite suspicious. I also want to show you just from the this affidavit. Can you guys see this? Can you guys see this? How do I get rid of this page here? There we go. So if you took the phone in isolation and you said, let's look at his phone, and then the phone just doesn't show you a pin in New Canaan, right? Let me say that again. You took his phone, and the phone in isolation just doesn't show a pin coming up in New Canaan. Then you could in theory say, okay, well then he wasn't in New Canaan. You know, everyone takes their phone wherever they go. I guess he wasn't in New Canaan. I guess he's not a suspect. But then there's a problem, because if you look at the DNA, look at that. There's a mixture of Jennifer and Fotis's DNA from a blood-like stain, which suggests either his blood is mixed with her blood, or some of his touch DNA or some kind of DNA of his has got mixed with the murder victims, which is pretty serious, not just his DNA on its own, and even that would be serious enough. But yeah, you've got a blood-like stain on the kitchen sink faucet. How did it get there? And what makes this pretty incredible, how can I be clear about this? What makes this pretty incredible is, thanks to Jennifer DULOS being a particular kind of person, she never let photos into her home in Wells Lane, never. And so the fact that she never let him into the house means that there's no innocent explanation for his DNA to be there. His DNA shouldn't be there, right? And I think he tried to kind of inveigle his way into the home on the last visit where he arrived early, and then he still said somewhere it closed. I don't know if you guys remember this being this coming up. He had visitation. He arrived early. This was frowned on. The social worker still spoke about this, and some place that they were supposed to go to, he said it closed early, and so he wanted to kind of entertain the kids on the property. And to her credit, Jennifer said, okay, you can do it, but you're still not coming in the house. And that was a way of possibly trying to show that his DNA was innocently there, but it wasn't innocently there. And that's not the only problem. The problem is, why is it a blood-like stain on the kitchen sink faucet? It's not like a blood-like stain on the mailbox or a blood-like stain on a remote control. It's a blood-like stain on the kind of thing that you would be your first port of call if your hands are full of blood. If there was a murderous attack in the garage, which we believe there was, where would be the first place the murderer would go to start his cleanup operation? Well, wouldn't it be the kitchen sink? And voila, that is where they find a blood-like stain. It's barely visible to the naked eye. And guess what? They find a mixture of Jennifer and Fotis's DNA. And so, wow, his DNA is at 69 Wells Lane. How come his phone isn't? And the fact that his phone isn't is already showing you there's a mismatch where there should be a match, because there could be an innocent explanation. He could say, you know what, I went to speak to Jennifer, and you know, when I came in the house, I'd stubbed my toe, and then I went and washed my hands, and then as I left, I saw a car pull in. That could have been his defense story, right? But then the problem is, why is your phone off during that period? So here's another one. Swabbing inside the mudroom door, DNA matched to Fotis DULOS. That's 2 DNA matches, right? That shouldn't be there by rights. And so this is showing that the person was at 69 Wells Lane in New Canaan, but somehow the phone didn't seem to be there. That's a bit strange. It's a bit strange. Just have a look at the next one. Just the DNA again. And DNA matched to Jennifer, and their black garden glove, Fotis DULOS, garbage bag, Albany Avenue. Black husky gloves, DNA matched to Jennifer DULOS. Now, those husky gloves, I'm pretty sure, are dirt bike gloves. I'm quite surprised that didn't come up. Let's just have a look. Husky gloves, dirt bike. Isn't that doesn't that kind of look like the gloves that we saw? Doesn't that look familiar, that logo? Just want to see if I can find one that looks a bit closer. But I mean, those do look like motorcycle gloves, don't they? Let's just get back to Husky gloves. Let's just search for Husky gloves. And yeah, I mean, that's what they look like. Look at that logo. And let's just have a look at I'll just put this on screen while we are searching. I know I've got them somewhere. So there's a glove. I can't see the logo on it. I'll see if I can show you another one. Do I have it here? It's not there. What did I do with it? Oh, there we go. Can you guys see the logo on here? It's almost just too small to see, but it's kind of got a little bit of a sharp point there. It looks like an ear. And then look at there's the ear again. There's the ear. Right? And what are these for? Heavy duty gloves, for, I guess, someone doing excavation work might use it, but they might also use it for dirt biking. I don't know, is there anyone who does dirt biking here? That recognizes those gloves? I'm just trying to see if I can get a better image of them. I've got the image, I just can't quite find it. Evidence. So I just don't have it at hand. So irritating. I mean, I know exactly what I'm looking for, I just can't find it. Anyway, yeah, I'm afraid I can't. That's the downside when you're not blogging about the case. You can't just refer to your own research. Liesel says, finally got off my last work call. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Anyway, let's just deal with this. So over here, this is the DNA matches to photos over here, but basically this is what matters. Is this DNA places him at the scene? That DNA places him at the scene, and yet his phone isn't at the scene, and so that's showing that somewhere the digital data has been erased or manipulated in some way. Can you guys see that?
Did you also look at call logs between that time period?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I'm gonna open file 12, called redacted call log. And what is
That's
the
right.
first call between 12:22 and that 7:10 time period?
The first call in this report is at 1:19 and 23 seconds PM.
And I'm going to draw your attention to line 9.
I'm a little bit surprised that this didn't come up with Pavel Gumini, unless it did and I missed it. But you can imagine it would also be a bit problematic, because if he says, yes, that glove, that's an evidence item, is the kind of gloves I wore and that we wore, well, then that would make him kind of a suspect. And you can imagine that his lawyer probably would have said, no, I don't want any questions about that. Thank you very much.
Fine, sir. Who did that phone call go to?
This was an outgoing call to 1-305-331-5232, Michelle Traconis.
What time did that call commence?
That call commenced at 1:53 and 56 seconds PM.
Was it answered?
It indicates it was, yes.
How long was that phone call?
23 seconds.
And line 5?
Line 5 was to the same phone number and same recipient, Michelle Traconis.
At what time?
That was at 3:16 and 6 seconds PM,
For how long?
1 minute and 19 seconds.
Line 4?
That'd be the same recipient, Michelle Traconis, at 3:35 and 38 seconds PM, 36 seconds in duration.
Line 3?
Line 3 was to phone number 1-860-716-7363, Pavel Gumini, at 4:49 PM, 0-second duration, and it indicates it was not answered.
So do you remember what we said earlier? We spoke about if she's a co-conspirator, then you'd expect there to be
coordination.
And was there any
coordination?
And I just don't think this is presented very well. It's not even on screen, but it's basically the fact that I think Fotis called Michelle a couple of times that afternoon, and question mark, what were those calls about, right? And what's quite interesting with Chris Watts is he called Nicole Kessinger early on, and then he stopped calling her. I mean, throughout the day. Why? Because the police were already at his home. But then he did call her that night. So although it's different, I don't think there's coordination going on there. It's kind of relationship coordination. The question is, and I think the missing link in all of this is Michelle Traconis's phone. I think the prosecution and and law enforcement really had their work cut out for them. How do you prove what's going on in someone's mind and heart and activity when you can't use their phone as evidence, that takes the queen off the chessboard. Now it's becoming very circumstantial and difficult to make your case without that.
Your Honor, I think the witness misstated, said it was to that number when in fact it's from. He's reading it.
That is correct. It's from that number.
So that would be from Pavel Guilmeny to Fotis Doulos' device at 4:49, and it was not answered. Is that right?
That's correct. It's an incoming phone call from Pavel Guilmeny that was not answered.
Okay. By the way, down here under network, this unknown network, United States, does that mean anything related to the phone call?
No, nothing that was pertinent at the time.
Okay. And last line one. If you can.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
If you can, what was the last phone call?
The last phone call on this report was to Michelle Traconis at 5:16 and 15 seconds p.m. The duration was 46 seconds, or 47 seconds.
And that was answered?
Yes.
Now that was between 12:22 and 7:10. Did you also examine location data between 7:10 and 8:30 for 524?
Yes, I believe I did.
Briefly, I'm going to open file 13, show you redacted device locations. Is this that same PDF we saw with respect to the locations for the other time periods?
Yes.
Did you take this document and place it in a video similar to what you created for the 12:22 to 5:10 time period?
That's
Or
correct.
7:10 time period?
That's correct.
I'm going to draw your attention to the screen, sir, and play video.
Location report, Fotis Doulos. Okay. And it's dealing with the afternoon period. It's not really, I don't think we really need to confirmation of that. It's going past 7 p.m. You can see it's traveling north. And then east. And then now it's in Hartford. Now it's 20 past 7. Now it's 10 to 8. And now it's after 8 returning to, well, it's still almost 8 o'clock. Almost 8 o'clock, 1 minute to 8. Now it's 3 minutes past 8, returning to now it's 8:15. Can't quite make that out. This is Hartford. Still can't actually make out the. Looks like 1940. Not that any of this is in dispute.
So did you also determine any text messages, IMS, SMS messages that were made from the Fotis Doulos device between 7:10 and 8:30 that night?
Yes.
Opening file 14. How many were there?
There appears to be 3.
If you can, sir, what is the latest one?
The latest is at 8:11 and 53 seconds PM.
Do we have the content of that? Or what type of call or message was that?
That was a voice call, and the source was WhatsApp.
And then line 2, briefly, if you can.
Line 2 is an incoming message at 7:58 and 36 seconds PM from Stephen Reich. Thanks for last night. It was good to see you guys.
What about this last line here? What does that mean?
It appears that there's an instant message being received from or sent from the device, but it doesn't have any data associated with it.
And what about call logs during that 7:10 to 8:30 timeframe?
Yes.
Opening file 15. How many calls were made during that time period?
On this report 4.
And what was the earliest call?
The earliest call was at 7:47 and 27 seconds PM.
To who?
That went to Kent Mahwini and was 35 seconds in duration and has an answered indicator on it.
That's quite interesting.
Now the 8:11 call, do you know who that is from?
So that is a WhatsApp call, and there is no name associated with the phone
Should
number.
we go back to that? Kent
And-
Mawini.
Now the 8:11 call, do you know who that is from?
So that is a WhatsApp call, and there is no name.
10 to 8:30 timeframe.
Yes.
Opening file 15. How many calls were made during that time period?
On this report 4.
And what was the earliest call?
The earliest call was at 7:47 and 27 seconds PM.
To who?
That went to Kent Mahwini and was 35 seconds in duration and has an answered indicator on it.
Interesting. Okay, so we were busy with the afternoon session here. We're going to return to the end of the afternoon session, but first I want to go to the telematics from the morning session. Let me just move that over. I'm just going to highlight it over here. I think this is... Anyway, this is just a summary from Fox 61. I'm not sure if it's the telematics, but we'll go to that in a second.
Morning until around 12:30 in the afternoon, police believe he left his phone at his Farmington home.
During that period of time, it remained in that area.
During that time, police say Fotis was headed to and from New Canaan, where he allegedly killed Jennifer, before coming back home. None of the calls or texts in that time were answered, except one at 8:24 a.m. from a friend in Greece, which police allege in the arrest warrant was an alibi arranged by Fotis the day before.
Quite interesting, isn't it? So in this, if you think about it in the same way that the Toyota Tacoma is a kind of alibi vehicle, it's to say, well, you know, if the body was transported in this vehicle, well, it's not my vehicle, right? And also, my vehicle didn't go to Jennifer's house. My phone didn't go to Jennifer's house. My DNA went there, but I didn't. He can basically have this as an alibi. That's certainly what law enforcement are suggesting, but it does kind of make sense given what a manipulative character this is, doesn't it?
This is a message, a sent message from Fotis DULOS that says, "Call me tomorrow morning."
A call police say Troconis admitted to answering herself in her third interview with them, saying it was brief. The friend on the other line is the same one who sent this meme to Fotis that week.
All right, you have two choices. A, you can spend the rest of your life with your wife, or B.
Earlier in the day, jurors heard from a forensic scientist who analyzed data from Fotis's cars, tracking the Ford Raptor the Friday Jennifer went missing.
Later that morning, we're at 9:53 a.m. It's now.
So that's what we're going to be looking at in a moment. We're going to look at the telematics, and then we'll go to the end of the court session. Must say the Raptor in this light doesn't look black, does it?
Now at a house in New Canaan, Connecticut.
Fotis's ex-employee, Pavel Gumieni, testified he had the Raptor that morning. Mark News says there are data points for the truck being there until that afternoon, corroborating that testimony.
Did the vehicle move from that spot at those three specific times?
So can you see the address? There's 61 Sturbridge Hill, New Canaan, and that is, of course, where Pavel said he was. And so how can I put this? You must try to imagine New Canaan is down here, right? New Canaan is here. And Hartford is up here. And where the where Fotis lives with Michelle is sort of here, there. I think it's Farmington. And so Pavel Gumieni being in New Canaan is problematic. It's like, well, the crime happened in New Canaan and you in New Canaan all morning. Wasn't that part of the plan, right? And so can you see that? And this is a very important allegation that potentially makes Michelle Troconis a co-conspirator, which is she's not only part of the alibi script, she's part of the actual alibi where she has his phone. She's responsible for these landscape things and the phone going on and off. And then she responds to this message, which was planned as well. And why would she be doing that? Have you ever used someone else's phone to give them an alibi for something? And you didn't know what the alibi was for. So I think we're now at something like 10 or 11 points that are building this idea that Michelle Troconis couldn't have been an innocent accessory. And the question is, has it been presented well enough for the jury to, first of all, follow, second of all, understand, and third of all, buy into, right?
It did not appear to. Those three specific data points are right on top of each other.
But that night, police believe Fotis had the Raptor in Hartford.
So just think about how sneaky this is. The fall guy, Pavel, has got the Raptor all morning, and the Raptor's in the area of the crime, right? Meanwhile, so yeah, and then the vehicle that Pavel drives is being used to transport the body, but it's being driven by someone who's shaved his hair to look like Pavel. And then the vehicle that Pavel's been driving all morning gets driven to Hartford to dispose of evidence. Kind of interesting.
Dumping evidence along Albany Ave with Michelle Troconis in the passenger seat.
At 7:48 p.m., there's one GPS point of data showing the vehicle on Albany Avenue in Hartford.
All evidence, Troconis' defense attorney says, is not new and not relevant to his client.
All of this is about the trial of the deceased Fotis DULOS and not anything to do with my client.
He's already said that a couple of times. Okay, let's go to this point.
Actually, sir, if you can either see the screen in front of you or actually, would you mind, Your Honor, may I just ask him to stand up by the screen? Sir, would you mind taking a step in behind you and pointing to the screen? Thank you. Is this the document that you created?
Yes, it is.
Now, the top line, the
Okay, before I forget, I just want to make a point or something. I'm gonna keep it to ABCs, just to keep it simple. A, B, C. Okay, so can you see on there? There's A, B, and C. So in this little schematic, A is the home of Michelle and Fotis in Farmington. B is New Canaan, the murder scene, but also, I guess, where jobs were being done in for the 4 group, right? There's some renovation going on there. And then C is Hartford, where evidence was ultimately disposed of. Now I want you to think of this in the same way. A is what's it? Pine. Where did Barry Morphy stay in Colorado? What is his home address? Something Pine. Pine, was it Pine Peaks or something? Pine Path. Puma Path Drive, right? Puma Path Drive. Thanks a lot, Robbie Robin. Wow, that's, I think, your second one. So think about A here. So A in this case is, and bear in mind this crime happened in late May 2019. Suzanne Morphew disappeared on Mother's Day the following year, 2020. And Fotis was involved in construction. Barry Morphew was involved in landscaping. And there's a little bit of an overlap there. Now, if you take A over here and imagine A is Puma Path, right? And then Barry was going to Broomfield. Broomfield is an analogy for New Canaan in terms of a job site, right? So that is where Pavel Gumini worked on that specific day. He was doing work for the 4 group. Meanwhile, guess where evidence is disposed of? Not in this direction. And I'm not saying that no evidence was found here, but in the opposite direction is where a lot of evidence was found, the license plates and the zip ties and the gloves and the towel and lots of other evidence. In the opposite direction to New Canaan, in the opposite direction from this home. If you think about this in the Barry Morphew case, Broomfield is in this direction. Suzanne Morphew's body was found in the opposite direction. Kind of interesting, isn't it?
(5/23/2019). What does that indicate?
Yeah, this is right.
And that's May 23rd, 2019.
Right.
4:52 p.m., 5:05, and 5:09 to 5:10 at Fort Jefferson Crossing. Could you just explain that line in connection with the maps below? And I'm going to move it up just a little bit to show the whole page.
You can see that the vehicle's parked here behind this house. And then here you can see that the vehicle moved. The blue line indicates the movement of the vehicle from.
Now you have a couple times up here, 425, 505. Which dots are related to the times?
This would be the first one and then the second one.
And 524, 2019 at 7:55 a.m. at a house at 27 Spring Lane in Simsbury. Can you please explain what that map shows?
There's a location of the vehicle parked in front of a home, and Google Maps showed that home to be 27 Spring Lane, Simsbury.
And the bottom photograph, please.
Later that morning, we're at 9:53 a.m. and the house is, it's now at a house in New Canaan, Connecticut, and that is.
So I guess what I'm trying to suggest is that could the Fotis Doulos case have given the killer in the Morphew case an idea, in other words, where you disguise the murder within, like Chris Watts in a way, but you disguise it within the context of a work day, and then you dispose of evidence somewhere else. And what I think you see in the Morphew case is it looks like the evidence it looks like the garbage that Barry's throwing away is something that you need to pay attention to, except it ends up that Suzanne Morphew's body is in Moffat, somewhere completely different. And one must ask the same question here: is Jennifer Doulos' body anywhere near Hartford? What do you guys think? Is Jennifer Doulos' body anywhere near Hartford? The other thing that's interesting in this case is as soon as you have one or two accessories, then it's very, very hard to track where the body may have gone, who had the body, where they may have taken the body. One person is quite simple, but even with Chris Watts, even though they were tracking his movements, they couldn't say for a fact, they couldn't find the bodies, even when they were following Chris Watts' movements. They found Shanann Watts, but they couldn't find anyone else. So it's not to say when you're tracking the movements of a vehicle or a person that you're going to absolutely find a body. And so it becomes so much harder when there's one or two or three or more people involved in that. Suddenly it becomes way more complicated.
61 Sturbridge Hill Road, New Canaan.
Between 7:55 a.m. at Simsbury and 9:53 a.m. at Sturbridge Hill Road in New Canaan, do you have any GPS data tracking between those time periods?
No, these two time periods were continuous. The next point of data was 9:53 a.m. in New Canaan.
And the next page, sir.
Okay, so later that afternoon, you can see we're now at 4:21 p.m., and that's local time. The vehicle's traveling on Route 84 through the town of Plainville.
Now, this is all the Ford Raptor, correct?
Yeah, this is the Ford F-150 Raptor.
Okay. Now, between 12:30 p.m. in Sturbridge Hill Road in New Canaan and 4:21 p.m. on Interstate 84 in Plainville, did the Berlin system give you any data, GPS tracking points for that time period?
No, those time frames are not present.
And that just means it could have been overwritten or damaged in any way?
Projection leadings.
Well, there's already been testimony that overwriting or damaged sectors can.
So do you agree that it does actually look like Pavel had an ordinary work day? He he was at work at just before 8 o'clock at 27 Spring Lane, Simsbury, right? He spent quite a long time. I think he said this, that he was at Sturbridge all morning from almost 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., right? And then he basically heads back to the office at 4:30. So if you take it from 8 a.m. to 4:30, that's basically
61 Sturbridge
a
Hill
work
Road,
day,
located.
right?
Those time frames.
And what happens when he pulls into Farmington, the Jefferson property? Well, he surprises them. I think Fotis said to him, "You need to make yourself scarce on Friday. I'm going to be seeing my divorce lawyer all day." I think what Fotis meant to be saying is, "I don't want to see you at all on Friday." And so I think how Pavel may have understood that is, through the course of the day, I'm going to be speaking to a divorce lawyer, but I mean, it's okay if I come after that, because then it's the end of the day. I think Fotis actually meant, you need to, I don't want to see you at all on that day because I'm going to be with a divorce lawyer. That's actually what he meant. Like, I won't see you Friday. Whereas Pavel, I think, understood that to mean, I won't see you throughout the day. It's okay if I see you to drop my vehicle off. And guess what? It wasn't okay. Seemed to be a bit of a miscommunication there. And so when he did pitch up, he surprised Fotis.
Are not present.
And that just means it could have been overwritten or damaged in any way?
Objection, meetings.
Well, there's already been testimony that overwriting or damaged sectors can contribute to spotty data. Overruled.
And sir, was there damaged sectors found in the Ford Raptor infotainment center that you received?
Yes, there was.
The bottom map, please.
At 4:32 p.m., a GPS point is recorded at a gas station on Route 4 in Farmington, Connecticut.
And by the way, this gives you no information about the driver or who was operating the vehicle or?
No, I know nothing about who might be occupying it.
And the next page, sir, if you will.
At 5:03 to 5:05 p.m., there's a track log showing the vehicle moving along Eli Road in Farmington, in the area of Talcott Notch Road.
And the bottom map, I'm sorry, I'll move it up.
At 5:38 to 6 p.m., the vehicle is back at 4 Jefferson Crossing.
And the next page, sir.
Okay, so I'm not going to go through that.
At 7:48 p.m., over here where it says unique number Bluetooth address, that's the Bluetooth MAC address of the infotainment system itself.
And the line under it that reads iPhone, what is that?
This is a device that connected to the system, iPhone connected via Bluetooth. This is the Bluetooth MAC address of that specific iPhone model.
Now, does this iPhone have a name or a contact person associated with it?
It's just called iPhone.
And at what time or day was it paired with the Chevy Suburban Infotainment Center? And I should actually, as I say that, ask you a foundation question of what does it mean to pair something?
Yeah, well, what it means is the two devices make a connection with each other so that they can communicate and exchange.
So that is something that probably didn't happen with the Tacoma. Any of you have a vehicle that pairs with your phone? And so you can use your phone. Your phone can kind of be the master that determines what music you want to play. It can also determine the route that you want to take, which you determine on your phone. Any of you use a vehicle that pairs with your phone? And so the question is, did Fotis's vehicle pair with, or try to pair with Jennifer's Chevy Suburban? I'm not sure which Chevy this is referring to.
Data.
Is there a date that the iPhone listed there made that connection and paired with?
Okay, I just want to deal with this question. No, Fotis didn't take the truck to get detailed that day. That happened a few days later.
With the Bluetooth connected or embedded in
Right
the
here, you can see paired time, Friday, May 24th, 14:56:32, year 2019.
Is that paired or connected time?
That's the paired time, which means they connected to each other.
It connected to each other. Okay, that 14:56:32, 2019, is that UTC time or?
No, that is local time.
So military time, that would be 2:56, is that right?
Correct.
In the afternoon. How is a device able to connect to a vehicle infotainment center if the?
So the impression I get, and I'm going through this quite quickly, I don't want to, it's not going to be a 3-hour live, is it seems like Fotis drove Jennifer's Chevy Suburban to the Tacoma, and then sometime in the afternoon drove, and they're both black, right? Both black Chevy Suburbans. Then he drove the black Chevy Suburban somewhere, which I think is quite interesting. It paired at two is it 36 or 56 on that Friday?
Vehicle is off.
The infotainment system has to be powered on in order for the connection to be made. It can't connect if it's not powered, if it doesn't have power.
How close does that phone or device have to be to the vehicle to make that connection?
Yeah, in my experience, the range for these things can be as much as 50 feet.
50 feet of the vehicle?
Yeah, the two devices have to be within 50 feet.
Now, this wasn't a new device. It only connected that day, correct?
Correct.
How do you know that?
These devices generally record the date of the initial or first pairing.
Okay, so I want to bring up something that's, I don't know why I'm putting my earpiece in. I want to bring up something that's quite important to understand. Let's see if I can play that little piece again. Where is it?
Trial of the deceased Fotis DULOS and not anything to do with my client.
Not new and not relevant to his client.
All of this is about the trial of the deceased Fotis DULOS and not anything to do with my client.
Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that? So let's say, do you agree that Fotis DULOS murdered Jennifer DULOS? Do you agree that he transported her body, that he went to her home, murdered her, transported her body, then to another vehicle, then transported her body somewhere else, right? Right? What I'm trying to say is, even if he did 90% of the work, even if he committed the crime, moved her body, did the whole cleanup operation, and buried her body somewhere, if he at any point told Michelle Troconis what he wanted to do, and if she expressed enthusiasm, and bear in mind, it sounds like she's even making jokes about killing her and also burying her, then if she at any point participates in his alibi, and to me, the what the F of the day is this idea that she had his phone. His phone was apparently in Farmington, and who else would have access to his phone? And I think it's a police theory that they arranged for someone to call them at the exact time that the crime was taking place, and then Michelle Troconis answers on Fotis's behalf, and then he suddenly has an alibi, right? And it's quite a clever scheme, except for the fact that there's DNA evidence left there, and there's a little bit of grainy CCTV showing a cyclist and his bicycle disappears. It's quite a clever scheme, except for that. But the point is, even if Fotis committed 90% of the crime, 95% of the crime, 99% of the crime, if he told Michelle and Michelle helped him and Michelle was aware of what was going on, then she is a co-conspirator. She doesn't have to have done 51% of the crime. She doesn't have to have done a third of the crime. She could have been a small part of what is important, like an alibi. That's enough. That's enough to be a co-conspirator, right? So this argument that and let's face it, they haven't found Jennifer's body, and there hasn't been a trial of Fotis DULOS, right? So you kind of need both of those to be proved in this trial. First of all, that she was murdered. Second of all, that Fotis murdered her. And third of all, the dynamics and the relationships and the connections between Michelle and Fotis. Let me put this another way. If you take away, because you don't have a body, if you take away the case that if you take away the case that Jennifer DULOS was murdered, in other words, you say it's irrelevant that all the evidence in the garage, it's irrelevant that there's all of this DNA, whatever, right? It's not irrelevant. It's not irrelevant. She was murdered. She was murdered by the person closest to Michelle Troconis. And what did Michelle Troconis do or not do that was unusual, including her own daughter being absent that whole day, including herself driving with Fotis through Hartford, where they doubtless didn't expect CCTV to be present. That was like a crummy part of Hartford where, it's like a rundown area where you just wouldn't expect that kind of infrastructure to be there. But that infrastructure was there because of crimes having occurred there in the past. And that's kind of the major error they made, I think. What they didn't expect was to be caught on camera disposing of evidence. I just want to say, although it seems to make sense to say, why are you prosecuting my client with someone else's murder? If someone is a co-conspirator and they didn't commit the crime, then you've got to show what he did and all the connections to her and right. And so don't take it at face value. It's exactly what the prosecution are doing. They do have to do.
Now, what jurors didn't see anything from today is any calls or text messages from Troconis's phone, and that is because the judge agreed to suppress that evidence long before this trial began. Now, there's no court tomorrow and no Monday either because of the holiday, so testimony.
And that is the jackpot for John Schoenhorn, is the fact that his client's phone is off the books. That's a major jackpot for his client. And that makes this case so challenging from the prosecution's perspective, doesn't it? Okay. I'm going to play a little bit more from the vehicle telematics, and then we're going to go to the end of the court day. We'll play just about 10 minutes from that.
Of the device, and then the last pairing of the device. They're usually the two dates and times that we get.
So suffice to say, these phones, you don't know if they were inside the vehicle or within 50 feet of the vehicle at the time that they were connected.
I mean, I can only testify to what the data tells me. The data tells me that a connection was made. It doesn't give me the distance the phone was from the device when it connected. That's not something that's recorded.
Thank you, sir. You can have a seat.
Okay, so let's jump to the end of today's testimony. Bear in mind, no testimony tomorrow. Your tomorrow is already my today. It's 1:34 in the morning here. So no trial, no day 21, either on Friday or on Monday. Okay. So don't look here for that. I'll be covering other things. I'll tell you a little bit more about what I will be covering. So let's just go to the end here.
The report indicates that the device went 63 steps and 44 meters at 6:57 a.m. and ended at 6:57 and 36 seconds, correct?
Yes, that's what that's number 69 is indicating.
And the one above that shows that then the next time it moved was at 1:19:13 in the afternoon of that day, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And it shows at that point 427 steps and 266.95 meters that device traveled, correct?
Yes.
Now, are you able to indicate from there whether or not between the 7:15 time and the 1 in the afternoon time, that device did not move at all?
Are you referring to May 24th, 2019?
May on that date, yeah. Are you able to tell that just from this data?
You would be able, if there was a recorded data within that period of time, you'd be able to see it if it was there.
Would the health app have to be activated for that to happen?
Yes, there would have to be, it would have to be activated.
And can an individual turn off a health app?
You can turn off the data to the health app, yes.
If your phone goes to sleep, will the health app also shut down?
Do you mean if it's powered off?
Powered off.
Yes, it wouldn't record powered off.
Will it also, if the phone is not used and it goes to sleep mode, would it also stop recording the health app?
No, not necessarily. It would record if it was in rest mode.
I just have a couple more questions and I'll be done. When it comes to the times for when there were phone calls, were those the times for the sender or the recipient?
It would depend. That's all from FOTUS DULOS's device. So the time that would be recorded would be specific to his, either when his sent that call or when his received that call.
And you also testified that GPS data would perhaps stop showing if the battery ran low. Is that correct?
Yes, it's possible.
You indicated that on direct examination, right?
Yes, it's possible.
May I just have a moment? I have no further questions.
I can
Is
just
there
have
a
one moment.
redirect?
One moment, Your Honor.
Just a couple questions if I can. Now, the document council had you look at on the Elmo with the health app, that's the health app, correct, on a phone?
Yes, it's one of the applications that would use that data.
Right. And that was prior, some of those times were prior to 5:35 in the morning, correct?
There was a large span of times. I don't recall all of them.
Okay. And the time that the state asked you on direct was specific to 5:35 to 12:22 time period. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna just want to clarify on states 131.
So just a quick comment. I've noticed black judges in 3 high-profile cases. There was a female African-American judge in the Mo Wilson case, who I thought was brilliant. No nonsense. There was the judge in the Murdoch case, and then there's also this judge. And I have to say, all 3 I thought did a pretty good job. I've also sat fairly recently in on the Laurie Vallow case. I wasn't crazy about the judge in that case. I thought he ran quite a tight ship, but there were quite a few things he did that I thought I didn't necessarily agree with them. Whereas I felt a lot of what the reasoning was in these 3 cases were quite interesting. Another thing that I think is kind of amusing is it is African American judges presiding over basically white folks, and in this case, rich white folks, certainly in the DULOS case and the Murdoch case, and kind of rich white folks getting up to no good. It's kind of a weird thing. Mo Wilson was from quite a wealthy family, but otherwise that wasn't really it was more sporty sort of case. By the way, you must please let me know, are there some of you here who weren't able to watch the 48 Hours documentary on Mo Wilson? I didn't think it was fantastic, but I did think the photos from the documentary, there were a couple of photos in the first 10-15 minutes that I'd never seen before that may be worth sharing. So if you haven't seen it, let me know in the comments. Anyway, I just wanted to make that comment. I know a lot of you have been very supportive of this judge, and he seems a very smart fellow, doesn't he?
Well, I would if this worked.
Very wise.
So let me just ask you, sir. Between 5:35 in the morning and 12:22 in the afternoon, did the phone move?
I don't recall whether or not it moved.
Okay. Do you recall the report generated on the activity?
Yes.
Well, and in that activity log, did it move a certain amount of meters or steps?
Without seeing the report, I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, the drive's not working, so I'll just ask you a couple more questions if I can. With the movement on the phone prior to 5:35, there was movement. After 12:22, there was movement on the phone, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And with respect to the user interaction data, I think that was what we talked about, the unlocking, the moving of the phone and everything. That could still happen even if the phone is in one place.
That's correct.
Okay. What about answering a phone call? That could happen if the phone is in one place.
Objection, this is just making statements, not even questions. misleading and it's not a question.
Okay, before that is addressed, I just want to deal with a question here from Desert Cat. Does anyone know if there was blood or DNA on the zip ties they found in the street bin? Well, here's the answer. 4 zip ties, DNA matched to Jennifer DULOS. There's the answer. There's all the DNA matches to Jennifer DULOS. Blood-like stain from a paper towel, blood-like stain, evidence on a sponge, mop handle, black garden glove, black husky gloves, vineyard vine striped shirt, extra small, the bra, a clear poncho without a hood, another clear poncho with a hood. There are the zip ties, standard textile brand bath towel. Then on various garbage bags, swabbing of the bag, interior of a knot, blood-like stain on the poncho. All of these DNA matches to Jennifer DULOS. That's a lot. That's a lot of DNA matches. And this one is a critical one. Swabbing of the bag opening and separate bag portion. I still don't know, was that kind of the inside of the bag opening? Is that the inside of the bag opening or the outside? Anyway, DNA match to Jennifer, Fotis, and Michelle Troconis. This places her potentially within the fabric of the crime. And then there's this as well. Michelle Troconis, DNA match, plastic garbage bags taped together. So Michelle Troconis' DNA found twice. Okay.
Well, the avenue of the cross concerned movement as captured by the health app. The redirect concerns movement.
Lois says, I believe it was the inside of the opening from testimony. It's just something I haven't been able to verify myself. If you can find an article on that, I'd appreciate it. If anyone's listening and replay, and you can find the source in the testimony with a timestamp, please let me know in the comments. I'd really be, because I think this is a vital little area. If the DNA is on the outside, you could explain that innocently. On the inside, not so much. You may remember that the defense lawyer, Schoenhorn, basically said that, when you remove a garbage bag from a roll, you tend to hold one, and it's easy to have DNA, innocent in a situation like that. That could be how that could be addressed if it's on the outside. Okay.
And the court is not aware that counsel is asking about movement through the health app recordings. But the issue is movement of the phone. So the court is going to allow the redirect.
So we've got 5 more minutes of testimony, and then I'm going to wrap up. It's not going to be a very long live tonight.
So overruled.
Thank you. Sir, if I can, I'll actually ask you a more pointed question. States 131, I was able to take a look at it. I'm going to open file 10, please. Now, this is what exactly is this again?
This is much more data-filled report regarding the activity sensor data.
Does this have anything to do with the health app?
Yes, this is what the health app would use in order to gather data for these things.
And this is encapsulates just the time period from 5:35 to 12:22. Right.
Well, I'm going to object. It's from 6 to 7.
Well, the witness can either agree or disagree.
Well, it's a misstatement of the
The
exhibit.
witness can either agree or disagree.
I believe this is all the data that was captured between that period of time.
For the activity sensor, for the movement.
Correct.
Now, prior to that, 5:35 time period, council showed you that report. That data indicates 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I think 5:11 was one of the time periods. That's on the health app as well.
That was the activity sensor data, yes.
Okay, but this is only after 5:35.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing else.
I have no question.
Thank you, detective. You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So I have to say, I felt pretty underwhelmed by Pavel Gumeni's testimony. I felt pretty underwhelmed by the cell phone data analysis. It's pretty kind of not very much information of value, and the vehicle telematics as well. I do think that the jackpot insight from today is this idea that Fotis's phone was left in Farmington at his home, and there was this whole ploy to make it look like he was somewhere else. And that, how can I put this? Digital evidence can be extremely useful because it's time stamped. It is, you can easily get a timeline and the date is accurate. But in the same way, it can also be easy to, how can I put this? It's easy to manufacture digital evidence, by making false digital trails. So, for example, giving your phone to someone else, hacking into someone's social media and posting when they're no longer alive, such as what seemed to happen in the Suzanne Morphy case with her Facebook. Sending text messages, even in the Jason Roeder case, it looked like he went into his wife's iCloud and possibly sent responses based on having that kind of access, right? And iCloud can be like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you may be able to tell what your wife is doing or your husband is doing. On the other hand, you may use that to pretend that the one is doing this or the other one's doing that. I was quite surprised when I was in California traveling with a school friend. He knew exactly where his wife was without even communicating with her. And she knew exactly where he was without him communicating with her. Even when he went to watch a movie, he didn't need to tell her because he knew that she would know, which I found kind of weird. Anyway, so in this case, it looks like there's so many areas where there's manipulation. If you think about the psychology of manufacturing an alibi, writing it down, right? In the same way that we said, if evidence is being wholesale deleted, erased from an actual crime scene, you can imagine digital evidence would be the same thing would happen, right? You had the same thing in the Chris Watts case. There's nothing really on his phone to find. And so in the same way that you can manufacture evidence with regard to you drive a red Toyota Tacoma, you cut your hair, you make it look like somebody else was doing something. Evidence is now, in terms of a vehicle, in someone else's vehicle, not your vehicle. And also think about that, just the evidence trail, it's going to be in Jennifer's own vehicle and in Pavel's vehicle, not in any of Otis's vehicles. Think about that. And I mean, Pavel never got his vehicle back thanks to that ploy. Right? And so you take that thing where you set someone up and you set something up, and this idea of you have your phone as your alibi, and you just have somebody answering it with a purpose, a phone call that is rigged to come through at a particular time. And that whole thing is suggesting that this idea that people are helping you, some knowingly and some unknowingly, with your little scheme, right? That's the jackpot insight that came out of today. I must say it's good to see more than 300 people in chat. I've been hoping to get to that number. I know it's a modest number, but it's at least it's good to see that. Mo Rama says, I didn't even have GPS to travel. What does Silent Murmur say? Yeah, she did say that. Okay. So I'm not going to take it further than that. Bear in mind, I'm doing Van Gogh letters at a little bit earlier than this time on Saturday. It'll be episode 73. I might do Van Gogh letters 74 either on Sunday or Monday. Bear in mind that's going to be a really special episode. If you don't typically watch that, the first 10 minutes we'll deal with 6 really fascinating surprises with Starry Night, including that Van Gogh wasn't very happy with it. Can you imagine painting one of the most famous paintings in Western art history, and you the artist don't actually like it. Everyone else does, but you don't. So we're going to be looking at that. Then, do you guys know about this Cyber Sleuth documentary series? It's a 3-parter dealing with the Idaho 4 case. Are you guys aware of that? Kathleen Hale, who I've interviewed on this channel, she wrote for Vanity Fair. She appears in there. What's really interesting, I read a review in Variety where the producer or the director speaks about the reason why they made it and how that changed while they were making it. How they had a certain idea of how social media was contributing to solving the case, only to realize the opposite. So the story they meant to tell and the story they ended up telling was completely different. So I've actually reached out to Kathleen Hale. As I say, I've interviewed her before. She's actually quite shy. And so when you ask her a question, it's quite difficult to get her talking. But I have reached out to her. Maybe you can do a half-hour interview. We'll see what she says. But she appears in that docuseries. And then I might be covering that this weekend, just some of the thoughts expressed there. One that really sticks out is, did social media have any evidence that the person who committed the crime was Brian Koberger before he was arrested? And it's a very important question because it's basically saying who is better at solving a case, law enforcement or social media? So you had that long period where they were looking for the owner of a white Hyundai. They were looking for the person who committed this crime. Well, who caught Brian Koberger? Law enforcement or social media? So that's quite an interesting thing to look at. So again, let me know in the comments if you would like me to go through some of those photos from the 48 Hours documentary on Mo Wilson, some photos I'd never seen before. Just gives you a little bit of a better idea of the kind of people Mo, Colin, and Caitlin were. So let me know what you think. I must say I couldn't really watch Cyber Sleuth. I just got so the chatter gets so what's the word? Kind of noisy, and it's so nonsensical that I just can't listen to it. It's just chatter that goes nowhere. Mods, just be aware of comments like that. She's innocent until proven guilty, and we don't want to make absolute statements of guilt. If she's found not guilty, you can be sued for that comment, right? This case isn't over. If she's found not guilty, then you can be sued for making that comment. So just be careful making comments like that. It's not an opinion if you say it in those words. If you say, I suspect she may have done something, whatever, that's okay. But making an absolute statement, you need to be careful. And I'm saying that not only for your benefit, but for mine as well. You may notice on a channel like Fox 61 that they've the live stream disabled because they don't want to be in that situation where someone leaves a comment and they're liable for it. Okay. Yeah, that is it. Elizabeth has apologized, and I do accept that. So thanks a lot, Elizabeth. Sometimes we just need to remind you guys. So it's a shorter live stream today. I'm quite pleased that we got over the 300 in chat mark, but we're always quite a intimate community here, quite interactive, and if I may say so, quite sensible. So I'll see you guys again on Tuesday in terms of this case for day 21. And it'll probably be a review of the evidence. I'm very interested to see if there'll be any other witnesses that are, like the gardener or the mailman or a DoorDash person or an ex-boyfriend of Michelle Troconis. It'll be interesting. Ex-teacher, I don't know, it'll be quite interesting. I don't know, would they bring her in from Venezuela, that kind of thing. Let's have a look at some of your last comments. Antoinette, it's just it's a documentary on 48 hours. I think it's on YouTube. Should be available there. Jalsi says, thanks for being here, everyone. And on that note, I'm going to skedaddle. Bandita says, do you think there are more than 3 people involved? Let's have a look. Photos. I think there are possibly at least 3 people involved. So could there be more than 3 people involved? Well, that arranged call from Greece makes you kind of wonder. Bear in mind, the more people who are involved, the more difficult it is to keep it together. And I mean, one way for that, can you say that Pavel Gumini was involved? I don't think he was, but he certainly is an accessory after the fact, perhaps unknowingly, right? Lynn, thank you for that almost $1. It's very kind of you. Thanks for that almost $1. Katie says, love your deep dives. I'm not sure what gouge you're talking about. There's a little bit of hair on her face. It's not a gouge. The reason I like this particular picture of her is she's looking into the screen. So if you have it like that, it looks like she's looking into the screen. So that's what it's there for. Thanks a lot. Glow with the flow. Thank you. We are Canadian. Okay. Okay, well, so that's it from my side. Thanks a lot for being here. Timmy says good night. His head is on my toes at the moment. My toes are actually pretty damn warm. Timmy definitely needs a haircut. Anyway, thanks a lot for joining me. I'll see you guys Tuesday, same time, same place. All the best. Thanks for the super chats. Thanks, mods. Welcome new members. Welcome new subscribers. And look out for some interesting content over the next couple of days on TCRS. Take care. Keep safe. Good night, all. Sweet dreams.